doing, Jimmy?
Hey,
What's
can you
fun?
see me?
I see you. We are at Carib Royale for tonight's Serrano 3-minute rounds for the women tonight. 3-minute rounds.
Is that the first time you've seen that?
I mean, it's not the first time it happens. I think Layla McCarter did it in '07. I think Christy Martin did it back in the day, but it never quite stuck. You know, it never stuck. But now women's boxing is on such a big momentum swing that I think more people are going to pay attention to it this time. So this time, I think it counts more because I feel like if it goes well this time, it may actually be able to stick and be able to pick up momentum. I don't think the other two times it stuck because I don't think women's boxing was at a place where people were going to care enough to make a change or not, you know. So I think tonight's performance, tonight's fight is important as far as the way if it shows more action with 3-minute rounds, it may stick. We'll see.
What's the difference there? Like, I know
The
it's
difference.
I know
The
it's a minute.
difference is you got to pace yourself a little better, Jimmy. You got to pace yourself a little better because you know what? 3-minute rounds, a lot of these women, they're in like a sprint, 2-minute rounds. They just throw a bunch of million punches. I know Serrano throws like over 100 punches a round in 2 minutes. It's much easier to do that. But if you do that now in the first 2 minutes, you're going to be gassed in the third minute. And then you're going to have a problem in that third minute. You know what I mean? So it runs, it makes you pace yourself a little bit better. It lets the fight breathe a little bit. It allows for more setting up. It allows a more strategic and cerebral kind of a fight, which I think the women have advanced themselves to the point now where at least the world-class women should be able to sort of have that understanding of setting things up a little bit more and not having to rush it. And I think they have the scientific knowledge of boxing at this point in their part of the sport too, the female boxing part of the sport, to where they're able to do that. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's also going to cause more knockouts because, you know, that having one less extra minute allows you to escape the round a lot of times. That extra minute becomes more heavy to deal with if the fight's not going your way as the fight goes longer and longer. So I think there's potential. Listen, there's also cons to it too. I mean, you could see more injuries. You know, you could see more knockouts, which could cause traumatic brain injuries if people are too tough for their own good and they're lasting in 3-minute rounds now instead of 2-minute rounds. So I mean, I think there's pros and cons, but I think you know what's going to decide it, because you're going to give opinions from both sides. What's going to decide it is the way it's received by the fans and the kind of show that the fans get, of course.
Where do you put Serrano pound for pound all time on your list?
She's top five for sure. Top five for sure, man. You know, maybe if you stretch it, top 6 or 7, but I mean, she's terrific.
She's active. I feel like
yeah,
she fights 4
now
times
was
a
the
year.
time when she could finally take advantage of her platform, of her, you know, of her position that she's acquired. You know, for a long time, Serrano was one of the best fighters in the sport, but yet she wasn't able to really capitalize off of it financially and capitalize off of it through gaining notoriety. Now she's finally able to do it, even if it's the late stages of her career. So she wants to take advantage of it as much as possible. So she stays active. I don't blame her.
If you got in there for 12 rounds against her right now in the shape you're at with the training you're at, how do you think you'd do?
I'd get stopped in a couple of rounds. Maybe with like a body shot. I think maybe with a body shot she'd get me, you know? She's been going to the body a lot lately, and I've been eating a lot lately. So my resistance to the body might be a little bit tough on me, you know?
I'll put that headline up. Paulie Malignaggi knockdown in the
I would do my best to try to protect my body though as much as possible, you know?
That'd be I've never seen a crossover fight, so I feel like if anybody would choose an opponent,
dangerous. It's not like you can't do Billie Jean King against whatever the other guy's name was, you know, because you know it's more risky with combat sports, you know. So it's a little bit more risky with combat sports, but nonetheless, you know, Serrano's at a good moment in her career, and I think she's getting a lot of deserved accolades. And you know, tonight's a good fight. Listen, her opponent is not a bad opponent either, so I think it's a good fight.
It's the real boxing match of the weekend because on tomorrow night we got Fury Ngannou.
Tomorrow we got the Fury Ngannou sideshow. Yeah, absolutely. That'll probably get a lot more views too. But I mean, it doesn't mean it's the more real fight. I think tonight is the more real fight. We're carrying it, and tomorrow is a bit of the sideshow, the money grab. The lower IQ fan base is going to be more attracted to that other fight tomorrow. I'm going to watch it too. I'm not going to lie, but you know, you're going to the extra. I'm also going to be watching tonight too. I'm going to be working and watching. I'd be watching tonight because the higher IQ fans will watch tonight, then most of them will probably also watch tomorrow. But what happens is also the lower IQ fan base that doesn't really watch any other kind of fighting, or boxing, they'll also tune in tomorrow and give that fight a lot more views.
Will you be buying the pay-per-view, or you have access to it?
I'm probably gonna watch it with friends. I don't know where we're going, but we'll figure it out, you know.
What do you think of all this? This is just good. This is he's basically doing the Jake Paul thing on a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it allows people to become financially more secure. I'm also I'm not totally against it, because I think, like, when you got a pig like Dana White who's underpaying guys so much, I think, you know, it's cool that a guy like Francis Ngannou can make at least get a little bit of a taste of what real money that's deserved for a guy of his stature in the sport that he's in would deserve. You know, I still think it's still a percentage of what he would deserve, but nonetheless, it's much more money than he's been making working for that pig Dana White. So I think you know, that I'm happy for Ngannou. I don't think it's going to go well for him. I think it's a pretty one-sided fight, as these things tend to be. But of course, you know, the sideshow element of it will draw the MMA fan base. The boxing fan base will still tune in. Casuals will tune in. It's been heavily marketed with the Saudi money. So you know what? People will watch, and it'll allow these guys to get some money.
Guess how much he made for his last fight against Cyril Gane in 2022?
Ngannou, I heard he made about $600,000, right?
$600,000. What? Yeah. If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. At what point in your career were you making around that type of money?
I gotta be honest, I was making good money when I won the title, but when my first title go around with the Bell Entertainment, I mostly got underpaid. But the Ricky Hatton fight, I made twice as much as that, you know, with the Ricky Hatton fight. And then after that, once I left the Bella, which was a little bit after that, I started making more than that pretty regularly. And once I won my second world title, you know, so it is easily the second half of my career. I made more than that most of the time for my big fights. Also, you got to understand the market was different. I'm talking about 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So $600,000 now and $600,000 20 years ago is very, very different. You know, or 15 years ago anyway, it's very, very different. Now, $600,000 now is basically like 350, 400,000 15, 20 years ago,
which was minimum.
Which was pretty standard for me, even at a high level with the Bell Entertainment, which was paying me below my worth, I thought, you know. But so when I got away from them, I easily made more than that. I was making more than that on a lot of my fights, a lot of my big fights, on all my big fights actually. And Ngannou's doing that in the 2020s with the UFC, which is absolute pig fucking status for the people running the show there. I mean, that is criminal. That is absolutely criminal, because that is a guy who is on the status of fame as your Wilders, your Furies, and guys like that. Should be making no less than $20 million a fight at least, and he's getting 600,000. I mean, dude, that's, you know, I don't know, man.
I mean, that's NBA minimum.
It leaves you kind of speechless, even me. It's this kind of thing that leaves even me speechless.
And it's being one of I put UFC in like the top 5 most popular sports behind like the big 4, in my opinion, when it comes to fan base and how big the pay-per-views are, and they're being paid vet minimums. And if they're creating this league, no wonder Ngannou, I can't say the last name, Ngannou. I can't believe it. You can't believe it. You're making more than that after your Cotto fight, and this dude's one of the best of all time. Going into the fight, how many rounds, Paulie?
What do I think of the fight? I mean, listen, I think MMA guys, they really are awkward when it comes to boxing. So you're not really going to be able to time them the same way, because their reactions are a little bit awkward. Their reactions are not really the proper reactions. So they're not really guys that you time. They're just guys that you just kind of beat up. You know, you just kind of offensively just beat them up instead of timing them, because when you try to time them and set traps, they don't react to traps in a conventional way. So I think setting traps for them is a waste of time. That's why Floyd kind of just walked McGregor down casually. And I think you can't casually walk down Ngannou, because heavyweights are bigger and more dangerous. So I think Fury is going to take the bully approach and just physically grind down Ngannou the way he did Wilder in the second fight. I look at Ngannou as a guy who is big and physical as far as being dangerous, but just like any other boxing puncher, like Mike Tyson, like Deontay Wilder, and guys of that nature, when you back him up, I don't think he's going to be effective because guys like that usually never learn to fight going backwards. And Fury is a big guy who knows how to bully you and set you going backwards. Fury also knows how to box going back, how to box himself going backwards. But I don't think he takes that chance against Ngannou. I think he just takes it right to him, physically mauls him, and then beats him up little by little and eventually stops him. If you're going to say, well, how does he physically maul him? Ngannou's also a big guy. For the lower IQ fan base that might be watching, like the MMA fans, it's called a jab. A jab will back up Ngannou, and off that jab, then things will set into place because Fury will use a power jab to back up Ngannou, and then off of that, once he gets his momentum going backwards, the power game is kind of offset, and then he can physically start to do other things to him, either put combinations on him, physically bully him around, get him on the back foot, and then, you know, it'll just be a slow decline from there. I don't see the fight going more than 5 rounds because of this. Mayweather could afford to play with McGregor because Mayweather is you know, first of all, a little bit less aggressive in his own way, but also Conor. You knew Conor. You can't even use this term anymore because women are actually tough now. But I remember Nassim Ahmed saying he brought out the girl in Kevin Kelly, which I thought Kevin Kelly was very tough. But I thought Mayweather brought out the girl, so to speak, in McGregor. But in modern terms, you can't even say that because women are actually tougher than McGregor in modern days. You can watch the way they fight. I'm actually working a good fight tonight. Serrano and I forget the name of her opponent. Actually, it's a big fight from Serrano. He got a 3-minute round. But nonetheless, I think that it's the same kind of thing here. But I think Tyson can't really afford to play with Ngannou too much the way McGregor was played with by Mayweather. So I don't think the fight lasts as long. I think Fury won't play with his food. I think he stops him in 4 or 5 rounds, backing him up the whole time.
And I feel like we learned a lot from the footwork, from what we've seen with Jake Paul, these guys, how the footwork is just on another level for boxers. And for MMA guys, it's just not there.
Well, that's a big factor. You know, the footwork has to change because there's no kicks involved to the legs. So the footwork, you have to adjust your footwork. And I notice a lot of MMA guys don't have that concept. I feel like if MMA guys are gonna go to boxing, they should at least bring in boxing people and to work specifically on their footwork. And people are going to say, well, yeah, Ngannou brought in Tyson. Yeah, but Tyson's style doesn't really work for tall guys. Tyson's style works for short, compact guys. That peekaboo style does not work well with big guys, you know? So I don't think that bringing in Tyson would do anything aside from add a few pay-per-view sales. I don't think and the only reason I'll add a few pay-per-view sales is because you got idiot MMA fans that will actually think it makes a difference. You know what I'm saying? Because boxing people know it won't make a difference. But nonetheless, you actually do need, as a boxer, as an MMA guy, if you come into boxing, you do need a boxing coach, a legit boxing coach that will specifically work on your feet and the way you move around the ring and the way you shift around. I think that's very, very important. And you don't see any MMA guys really making that adjustment. So that their athleticism doesn't translate to boxing because their footwork is horrible. And this was none the more noticeable than with Anderson Silva for Jake Paul. Anderson Silva, who's this amazing athlete, looked like he was completely uncoordinated and goofy in the Jake Paul fight. And that's because his footwork, he didn't know how to adjust it so that his athleticism could take advantage of being able to box. It's not that we know Anderson is very, very athletic, but because his footwork wasn't adjusted, he was made to look goofy. So when you adjust your footwork, you get the most out of your athleticism. The shame is Ngannou is pretty athletic, I think, for a big guy. But I don't see his footwork making any adjustments. So therefore, he will look clumsy. And especially when he's being backed up, he won't know what to do. And I think, he'll get beat on.
If we're living in the universe where Francis pulls this upset, how does he do it?
Close his eyes, throw a big right hand, and hope that Fury doesn't see it. That's it.
That's it? I don't really see it going more than 3.
And then hope and pray that your right hand drops Fury and keeps him down. Because as Deontay Wilder found out, you can put Fury down, but you can't keep him down. But of course, I'll tell you what.
That's how he learned to fight.
If Ngannou can so much as even get a knockdown, it's huge. I mean, that's huge. That's all he has to do, really. You know what I'm saying? If he scores a knockdown, even if he doesn't win, that will make more headlines than the result of the fight. Because Ngannou is, the underdog here. If Ngannou so much as scores a knockdown with a big punch, I think that makes more headlines. I mean, plus MMA fans are that dumb that really that they would just hold on to that. They held on to a fake knockdown with me. That wasn't even really a knockdown with me and McGregor, and they're still talking about it 5, 6 years later.
Paulie. It's
Yeah, they're still talking about it. So can you imagine if their guy gets a knockdown, that's all they would have to hold on to. And honestly, I think a real knockdown would be deservedly something to speak about. The only reason the McGregor thing is something that is a bit laughable is because it's not a knockdown. At this point, if you probably see, people have been able to see the video so many times that they can tell it's not a knockdown, and they'll still fall for it. So that's good. It's a low IQ fan base, unfortunately. But if you get a real knockdown, I mean, Ngannou would steal the show regardless of whether he gets knocked out after that. If he can score at least a real knockdown, that would get all the headlines, and that would be like a moral victory. And I feel like Ngannou would be able to leave with his head high, even if he gets stopped.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, because the MMA guys who have gotten into boxing, I mean, they haven't even been able to knock out Jake Paul. Like, I don't think one of them has come over yet and done anything, which is a testament to just how different the training is.
And really, it's a shame. The only reason it only happens in one way, and you don't see boxers going the other way, is because the market share for MMA is not fair. So the boxers aren't going to like take a pay cut or make the same money they would in boxing to fight an MMA guy. They're like, oh, if I can make that money in boxing, why would I come over to MMA?
You're forgetting somebody.
The money has to be so drastically different, Jimmy. The money has to be so drastically different, and it's only drastically different when MMA guys come to boxing. Unfortunately, I remember it. Who's the boxer that went to the UFC and tried? What happened? I didn't hear
you. Who's the boxer that went to the UFC and tried? I know who. I know
James Toney.
James Toney. Yeah.
Yeah, but James probably just needed money. James actually probably, and that was actually the worst style for him. I mean, he boxed Randy Couture, and James Toney was always an inside fighter. So, and the inside fighting in MMA is not going to work because they're going to just grab you. So, that was probably the worst style matchup as well.
I want to see that. If you had to choose one boxer to cross over to MMA, who would you want to see? I know you wouldn't want to see it, but who would you want to see?
Right now, I don't know. I mean, last generation it would have probably been like Lomachenko or Sean Porter. I think
Mm-hmm.
But now, I don't know really. I mean, I don't know what kind of wrestling background anybody has. I'm not really too sure. Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be able to give you a good enough answer, but in my generation, it would have probably been like a Lomachenko or a Porter.
Yeah, I could see Porter with that mauling style, and then Lomachenko
Lomachenko did sambo till he was 15 years old, so he's got a pretty good.
He's got the MMA look too for some reason. I don't know what it is. It's also like an MMA look.
That's called the Russian look.
Eastern European, yeah.
We can't call Ukrainians Russians anymore, so you got to be careful, Yeah. And anybody stop talking shit. My girl's Ukrainian, so don't give me shit.
Last couple things. How does this affect the Dubois, not the Dubois, the Usyk fight that's supposedly supposed to happen in January?
Which fight?
The Usyk Fury fight.
Yeah, I mean that's the one everybody wants. I think Fury's playing it very smartly. He's kind of using Ngannou as a sparring partner, get himself back in shape. And then kind of flowing right into it. I think Fury's kind of genius for doing that, because you kind of flow this whole show and you keep yourself motivated mid-camp, and it gives you an excuse to have a long camp because the motivation of the Ngannou show can give you that extra motivation to start early, start training hard early, and that way you can kind of flow right into the Usyk training camp where you'll start preparing for the southpaw after Ngannou. So I think that's smart, and I think it's very well played for Fury if they do fight in January.
Last thing is with Showtime leaving and HBO been gone. And Saudi Arabia stepping up for all these fights. Is it the new Mecca of boxing?
Yeah, they are stepping up, man. I mean, I feel like we're going to see more shows. I don't know how many legit fights we're going to get over there because it seems like they like to buy the side shows, which is interesting because they do, I guess, get a lot of views. But I mean, I would love to see the Saudis buy like real fights. Because if you put enough money on the table like they do, I think the real fighters that deserve to have the real matchups would be amazing to have these kind of fights there where you would actually get your money's worth and you wouldn't see a sideshow, So I hope that, they would have to spend maybe 2/3 or half as much of the money. And they'd still be able to, what the Saudis need? The Saudis need what we used to call in the Italian mafia, consiglieri, counselors. They need counselors that teach them how to spend and what money to spend, where to throw this money, because they have so much money they just want to bring all these big shows over there. But if they get counselors that they would pay, they paid counselors, they would still be able to save money by paying these counselors who would then give them the right advice on how to properly spend this money and what fights to buy, which I think would be amazing. I wouldn't mind keep seeing these fights over there. I just want to see the right fights. I don't want to see constant sideshows.
Last question: would you buy Haney Prograis?
Would I buy what?
Would you buy Haney Prograis? The last fight.
Would I buy Haney Prograis? I mean, I don't think it's a fight worth buying. And Prograis Haney is the fight because Prograis is a champion. But I think
my bad.
I don't think it's a pay-per-view fight, honestly. And I think now with Mayweather possibly going the same night, hopefully Mayweather moves his pay-per-view over, because I don't think that's fair to Haney and Prograis. These are young fighters. They're trying to take over, kind of going over the. At least Haney is trying to be a next generation fighter, trying to build up a fan base, and then you do a pay-per-view the same night as Haney. So I feel like Haney, the fact that he's going pay-per-view is something I disagree with, but I feel like you should at least leave that night alone so that Haney can actually try to maximize himself as best as possible. Personally, I think it's the wrong way to go. I think he's got a less important opponent. Prograis is a really good fighter, but he's been under promoted his whole career. And I don't think this fight generates as much name recognition as Lomachenko against Haney. So I think that because of that, and Lomachenko against Haney only got about 150,000 sales, you're risking getting even less sales for this one. And it's going to be an egg on your face if you keep going pay-per-view and getting such small buys. So I think there has to be the right moment for pay-per-view. I can understand what the Haneys are doing with this, but first of all, I just don't understand how the zone hasn't gone broke yet. I mean, somebody's got to investigate. If those guys' last names ended in vowels, they would have investigated for a money laundering scheme already years ago. I don't know what's going on over there, bro. I don't know. It is impossible to keep making money and keep spending the money they do and keep losing it the way they do it. But whatever. That's neither here nor there. It's not my opinion. But I'm just letting you know, if the owners of those own last names ended in vowels, they would have been investigated by Interpol for a long time already.
All right. Well, it's Combat and Coffee 14. Thanks, Paulie. What's your final prediction for tomorrow and tonight for Serrano?
I think Fury stops Ngannou in about 4 or 5 rounds. I'm going to say 5 rounds. I'm going to say Fury stops Ngannou. And I'm going to say that he's going to take the approach of backing Ngannou up, because that's the safe approach and that's the best approach to take on this puncher that is a beast of a man as Ngannou, you know? And I think Fury's big enough to do that and has a tactical intelligence to do it behind a strong jab. As far as tonight at Serrano, I'm going to say Serrano gets a stoppage around 9 or 10. I think she's got a worthy opponent in front of her, a decently tough opponent in front of her. But this should have been her and Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor, I heard, turned down a 3-minute rounds rematch, and so she's had to go this route. I think 3-minute rounds between two super phenomenal names like Serrano and Katie Taylor would have been this generation's female Sports Illustrated cover, the way Chrissy Martin did about 30 years ago. I think this would have been a Sports Illustrated cover moment if it would have been Serrano Taylor, 3-minute rounds, and if the fight would have lived up to the hype. You would have had this generation's female Sports Illustrated cover, just like you had it with Chrissy Martin years ago. That was a big statement when Martin made this Sports Illustrated cover. I think they by not being able to do it with this fight, I think Serrano and Taylor lost an opportunity. But I think Serrano is still trying to take the mantle herself. I don't think it's a Sports Illustrated cover moment, but nonetheless, it's an opportunity to make a statement. And I think that she'll get a stoppage tonight in a good fight.
What was that Italian word that you just used for our Italian
counselors?
Word? Yeah,
for the consiglieri.
Our Italian word of the day.
They need a few. That's the Italian word of the day. Consiglieri. It means counselors. They need a few counselors, consiglieri, over in the Middle East, to teach them how to spend all that money so that they buy the right fights and the fights that are worth buying, and also spend properly for them, because a lot of times they overspend.
Thanks, Paulie.
All right, guys. I'll see you later. Holy Malignaggi, Paulie TV.